Hello everyone and welcome to the 2Have 2Role podcast. My name is Oliver. Today Robin and I are talking to Maz. Maz is a long-term LARP player. She's also a long-term player of the Empire LARP system. Maz is currently in the nation of the Marches. She's also an Egregore in the LARP system as well. So we talk about the nation of the Marches. We talk about what it's like being an Egregore in the Empire LARP system. And we also maybe talk a little bit about Dawn as well. So we hope you enjoy it.
I am good at killing flowers and plants though, so I probably
I can murder. I'm not in charge of anything in my house as regards anything green because I killed a bay tree. I mean,
Yeah, we are both useless in that sense. Like I think the easiest thing to grow apparently is tomatoes, and I couldn't keep a tomato plant alive.
They grow themselves.
I know, they still died.
Even I can grow tomatoes.
I got succulent desk plants, like these little ones, and it had like a little cacti and everything with them. Yeah, dead. Gone,
Yeah.
dead.
Yeah, well, I tried to.
Any water.
We tried to grow them from like seedlings, and it's as if the seedling like popped its head up and looked at me and went, "No, sod this," and just died. No,
Amazing.
I'm out straight away. Maz, how long have you been LARPing for?
Since 1997, but I did my first fest. I did my first fest in '98. So yeah, 97.
That's a while. So what was the first LARP you went to?
So the first one I ever did was Oxford Uni. We did not Oxford Uni. Sorry, that was the second one. First one I did was Bangor Uni.
Ah, right, yeah.
Okay. So, so that was fun.
Yeah, that seemed to be the way people used to get into the hobby was through, because we spoke to Jeffrey the other day and he said
he's same year as me he started.
Yeah, and it seemed to be the way people got into it was through these uni groups, you know, which I'm assuming
there's
still a lot of them around. But yeah, that's probably why likes of us, we completely missed it. Yeah,
I mean, you guys got into it in a more sort of what's the word? A more sort of a less fringe way of getting into it, I think.
Yeah.
And I think kind of the onset of the internet proper and social media has got a lot to say for the ever burgeoning numbers of LARPers we've got.
Yeah. So what's the difference then between now? Has that made a big difference? Kind of these bursts of media coming in?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had that big influx a few years ago when we had the 3 men go LARPing.
Yeah.
That was a massive influx, and then it's kind of just then lockdown happened, which was probably the best thing ever to happen to LARP, because what happened was everybody's like, shit, I'm so bored. Hey, look, this is a cool thing we could do. As soon as we're able to do it, we're going to do it. And so the hype train just built and built and built and built.
Yeah.
So rather than the hype train building, people going and, a proportion always decide it's not for them, then off they trot. There's this hype train had built, and so they brought their friends in. So more and more people had this big hype for it.
Yeah.
And so then when the pandemic finished, it was still really, really big.
Oh yeah. Well, that was us. I mean, it was just like, because we were a lot of people were on our track. They were TTRPGing through the pandemic, and then I think because LARP is it's like the antithesis of a pandemic lockdown, isn't it? Because it is extremely social, and you're all getting together in big groups, and you're kind of close and intimate, you know. So people may be craving it.
Exactly that. People have been so kind of isolated during the lockdown periods that what they really, really wanted was people. Yeah. And what LARP really, really gives them is people.
Yeah. So what drew you to LARP in the first place? Were you always in that kind of that part of the culture, or is it something you looked at and went, that's for me?
My first year of university, right? I was at the Freshers' Fair, and I'm like, right, I've decided I'm going to rebrand myself. I'm going to be one of the cool kids. That's what I'm going to do. I thought to myself. So I looked at the people with their rubber swords, wearing their, frankly, your first year of university, don't have ours. And I went, no. no one will think I'm cool if I do that. Nobody. So I hung out with the climbing society and that bundle because they are cool. And I hung out with that for a year, and then I was like, why the fuck am I wasting my time when I could be LARPing,
having fun?
So that's what I doing. Exactly that. It was a point at which one of the guys who was on my floor in the second floor up in the halls, who was also in the climbing club, got really, really drunk, tried to jump from one windsill to another outdoors and fell off. And survived the experience because he was really, really drunk. So that was fine. He broke an arm, I think it was, or a collarbone.
Yeah.
So he survived that experience, and I just thought, oh my god, the people I'm hanging around with, really.
Yeah.
Really, I decided that my risk levels were probably lower than going climbing with a bunch of people who thought it was a good idea to throw themselves out windows. So, and then at the point at which they wheelied the minibus and it came over and it side on a mini roundabout, I was like, yeah, no, just gang instead.
So these university, because I'm assuming they're obviously like they're small LARPs that they set up, and so what? Because we haven't done we came in to the Fest LARP system, so we haven't done we never went through the whole lot. We're doing the small LARPs and then big LARPs. When the because there's not a lot of Fest LARPs, they've not been going for a long time, have they? So when was your like transition to like, oh, I want to do this but on a grander scale?
So smaller for me started off back in the bad old days of, there's still a few of them about, of battle boards.
Yeah.
So where it was complicated enough that after a fight you had to basically go to the ref and say what you'd done and then decide whether you're going to fall over or not.
Yeah.
So locational hits are the bane of LARPing. They really, really are, because no one can count locational hits well. They really can't. You just kind of get an idea of, okay, I've roughly this much, and this much, and then I've got my global on top because I've got this magic thing up here, and then I've got dodge because I've got this thing that allows me to dodge this many times, and yada yada yada. And so you have to have that written down so you can then go through and say, all right, what did I use during that fight? Okay, have I fallen over? Yes, no. So but back when I started it, that was cool. So
that was the fun part of it.
So did you literally have like a character sheet type of thing?
Yeah, with a picture of a person on it, and then your number of hits on each location, and then they'd cross it off to show you how many you had left, global, how many of these skills they'd crossed off, how many of the skills you'd used, how many times you used that skill, those kind of things. So you literally battled after every fight, which really broke up. So it really was very, if you think old school D&D, rather than 5th ed, it was very much more of a broken up, as much of a focus on the stats as there was on the story. So it was great to run around the woods and scare dog walkers and hit your mates with swords. It was really, really fun. Apart from the shields were made of wood, which was less fun. So this one here, that tooth's fake from getting smacked in the face with a wooden shield.
Shield
bash. Pipe flagging around the edge, and we used to be like, oh, that'll be fine. It wasn't fine.
That'll be fine. No, not fine when you're getting overexcited and
that. So that was the bad old days of that. And then I went 1998. I was meant to be going to visit a friend in Ireland. The Omer bombings went off, and I was an army brat, and they said, no, you're not going to Ireland. So then I went to the gathering instead, because a friend who was starting up a group basically and said, do you want to come along? And I said, no, I'm too scared. And they said, I'll pay you for your ticket. I was like, yes, I will come along. And so that's Lorien Trust. That was my first experience, which it's very, very different to Empire. It's very much of a more open world. So you could basically, you had people who were like, you'd have like knightly knights fighting alongside death jesters, fighting alongside basically 40k orcs, and everything in between, really. So it was, it's quite
I
did
broad.
That for a number of years and very much enjoyed myself, but narratively it was a little.
It's funny you brought up D&D because like you said, the earliest edition of D&D was based off like tabletop gaming, and it sounds like very much some of these LARP systems were also based off like tabletop gaming, and they were grinding mechanics, and that's what you draw that type of people that are into the mechanical side of it. I think with 5th edition, the one great thing about 5th edition is that it is so easy to learn for a player. And now we're getting lots of people that want to come in purely for the role play, and it's like, I don't care if, I'll just, whatever the character, I'll have the character, but what really I want to do is pretend to be someone else, and I think that's...
It's the difference. That's exactly it. It is the stats supporting story. Rather than the stats being the thing. And that's really one of the things that I've always been, after Maelstrom, always been impressed with PD for, is that it's stats to support story, and that's with Odyssey and with Empire.
Because you really feel like you can go into Empire and literally just name your character, pick a nation, and that's kind of it. You don't have to. Yeah, you just go, and you don't really have to. Because I mean, we went in pretty. We kind of knew what we were doing. Like we spent most of our energy figuring out what we needed to camp and what we needed to do to make friends and things like that. But when it came to the actual rule set and the world, we just went in. We were. This would be way fun if we just go in as blind as possible. And it doesn't take away from the experience at all, It's
maybe a little too blind now I reflect on it, but yeah.
Nah, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I found really good about Empire. So I've been in 3 nations now. I started off in Burge. It wasn't for me. I moved to Dawn. Dawn was very much for me, and I massively enjoyed myself and had an absolute laugh. And then during the pandemic, I thought I've kind of done everything I want to do with that character. She was a whole heap of fun to play, but probably time to have a move at that point. So I moved to the Marches, and it's just chock full of adorable people, and I love it. And they're such mischief makers. They're just
yes.
Like
so
everything I love about them. And I love mischief. They really are. They're and they work really well together. And that's one of the things that I really love about Empire is that each of the nations has a very strong feeling and flavor. So someone's in the Marches by looking at them.
Oh yes.
But you also know they're in the Marches by how they behave. So it's not just costume; it's characterization. I really like that. You can tell a Marcher a mile off.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, that's what I love about the game as well, because you have these distinct groups, and it's fun playing with those human ideas of tribalism, which can have, I go on about this a lot, but which can have very negative connotations in the real world. But it's fun to put yourself into a group and represent a group to the point where people. I mean, we've only been playing our characters for like 4 events, and already you walk around, even though we're not, we haven't got the Dornish. Sometimes I have the Dornish son with me, but you walk around, you just carry yourself a certain way, and you behave like the people in your nation, and people just go, You Dornish? Yeah, I know, you Dornish. I'm like, I've said 2 words. How would you know? But I think it's just this one thing I just really, really love about it. So you've been in 3 different nations. How long have you been playing Empire for?
Since E1 of the first ever Empire. So I got in on the the event horror, cold, death, mud, horror event.
Yeah.
And still came back for more, so it must have been all right.
Oh yeah,
but
yeah.
The thing you say about tribal stuff's really true. With the Marches, there's this fab old thing that, because obviously the game encourages that, so that it encourages that you are different to other nations. And one of the lovely quotes in the Marches is me and my family against my neighbour, me and my neighbour against the next village over, me and my next village over against the next town over, me and my nation against the other nations. And there's kind of that. So it is your core. And then me and the Empire against any other one. Yeah. So your bounds of trust are really, really. It's like dropping a pebble in water for Marchers.
Yeah.
Thing
is, I grew up in the UK and I spent most of my life here, but I feel like it might be the case elsewhere. But that does actually feel like a very that feels very inspired from the UK. It feels like where. Where I'm from Manchester, so I'm against Liverpool. But when we meet someone from down south, we're Northerners, and then when we meet someone from Scotland,
exactly
we're English. And then
it's like, I'm a Mancunian over the top in Yorkshire. They're all weird over there.
Yeah, exactly. And it goes down to the village level, doesn't it? Or the estate level. You're just like, we're from this estate, But then when you like you said, the ripple effect, which is really cool. But you kind of get that in Empire as a game, which is really cool because you could only play an Imperial, and you have these distinct nations, and there are there does seem to be elements of PvP, but when everyone goes out onto the battlefield, it's just like, all right, now it's the Empire.
Yeah, we are the Empire now.
Which is incredible, isn't it? Because you have so many people, it's literally thousands of people at this point, and you're like, oh yeah, you have to be part of the Empire, and it's surprising how everyone just goes, okay, cool, we're the Empire.
It's really cool. So, for instance, I have very little to do with Urizen generally, not because I don't love them, but just because they are very different to, either of the characters I've played, really.
Yes.
And one of the great things about that at Urizen, though, is just you get, after a while, you get your sort of key people in the nation where you're like, I really like you, you're my kind of person. You, Luca, you are the worst. and you get sort of those situations. So it's like my last character in the Scarlet Guard were not besties, but in Urzen. But when you got to the battlefield, all bets were off. So, for instance, you're down. So me and a group of friends, Dornish, were down. There's a little copse of trees right at the top end of the field. We were screwed. We were like, we're all cursed. And so anyway, it all went terribly wrong. And we're there literally. Yeah, I've got a stopwatch, literally, put it down. When it goes off, I know I'm dead. And I'm like, it's not going good. There's a monster leaning against a tree going, oh, it's not looking good for you. So we're all role playing our beans off because, we might as well because we're all way out.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we just see Urzen like pegging it across the field towards us at high speed, sitting there, taking down orcs as they go. Absolutely brilliant. Got there in the nick of time. A couple of people dead. My stopwatch hadn't gone off yet. I do a stopwatch because I can't role play and count.
I tell you what, I'm thinking about doing that because some people have done it.
It means you can role play when you die, which is the best thing. In a battle, battles are all about role play as well as fighting. So,
because you lose count instantly, don't you? Because you go down on the ground and you're like, I'm on 0, and then you start going, oh yeah, help, and then you're like, crap, hang on, 5,
counting,
hang on, wait, I can't count and scream at the same time.
So literally, I've got a little Casio, and I hang it off a thing, and I tuck it inside my armor, so you don't see it.
Yeah.
And it's just you just start the timer going. When you're dead. Yeah. It's quite handy.
Yeah, I might forget some of them.
Fortitude is your friend if you want to role play whilst dying, because the more fortitude you've got, the more chance for role play you get before you die. But Urzen just like saved our absolute bacon, and we were just like, and then we had Beta hasty retreat, fighting all the way back to get back to Urzen's line. I lost the whole of Dawn. I ended up fighting with Urzen the rest of the that battle, but it was really fun.
Yeah.
And so you make links on the battlefield that come back into Anvil.
Yes.
Which is really nice as well. So because you kind of get the idea, if I can trust the person in a fight to have my back when it's not in their specific interest to come save my life, then I can trust them in Anvil. And we might sometimes you end up with this really nice thing where your rivals in Anvil but like besties on the battlefield. And that's always really nice.
I think that seems to be how the best bonds are really made, isn't it? Like out on the battlefield, when someone's having to actually save you, it seems to be the best role play and the best bonds and the best sort of character development. And then seeing that come back, because that happened at one point with myself and Marchers, because we're mucking around and everything, and then I had ended up having some amazing roleplay moments with them on the battlefield, and then I was like, oh, is that actually transferring back? And it is, and it's so wonderful when that happens. That's
the good thing about the glory square and the tournament stuff, because I think people overlook that, because sometimes even like people in our nation will go, oh, are we having too many tournaments? Are we being too martial? Do we always have to fight in the glory square? Is it inclusive enough? But honestly, like having those just scraps in the glory square, you literally see what everyone's capable of. So if you're fighting against even if it's someone in your own nation, and you fight against them, and you have no idea, because there's been a couple of people that, especially being new to the nation, you have no idea who they are. You fight against them, and then you're like, oh right, okay. And then when you're out on the battlefield, you're like, I know what this person's capable of. I'm perfectly happy standing next to this person. And whether that be a march that you fought in the glory square or an Urizeni, when you're on the battlefield, oh, I know this person, what they're capable of.
You know they're good. You know what they can do.
Yeah. So
I'm a real fan of the glory square in that it is a great place for both fights, but also those more non-martial things. So for instance, some bardic stuff. It's a great place to throw your children when you've got kids of a certain age. They're great because you like, as long as you're campsite and you can see the glory square, they're fine for like an hour.
Oh, yeah.
But it's really good for lots of non-combat stuff as well, which I think is super important, because I think the trouble with the way people think of Dawn, I'm kind of coming to Dawn, it's the way people think of Dawn is that Dawn is all about fights. Yeah. But there are way more ways to get glory than just in a fight, and I think that's really important as a nation to kind of keep an eye to, because we are really good at it. They are really good.
I got you. You thought you were coming on to talk about the marches. Yeah, it's a shame because we obviously missed each other in the nation, because obviously we started this year. And was that something you had planned for that character, like going into the longest dark, or did you just through that pandemic go, you know what, I'm coming back as something different?
So I'd got Captain of the Throne Guard. I'd done the entire really cool narrative with Empress of Flowers and the entire kind of dreamscape thing and stuff. That was really, really cool. I very much enjoyed that. I've got some amazing relationships. There was one thing I do regret from bringing that character to close. I'd done everything that narratively it was the right point to do it.
Yes.
But I do miss sort of a couple of relationships, some of the antagonistic ones, but also there's a guy called Matt who plays Casper, who was the brother of Her Imperial Majesty. And I loved our dynamic in character. I thought it was amazing. And that's also just lovely. So that is the one thing that was where I was like, I just stay on for a bit longer. There were a few events where I was just staying on for a bit longer because I was really enjoying the interactions with Casper. But then you come to the point where you're like, I think I'm done. And then the pandemic happened, and then I was like, yeah, no, I'm definitely not going back to Danny. So
So what was your character archetype then? Was it did you start Yo Folk into Noble and do the whole thing?
I had the best. I'm not going to rant on about it, but I had such cool test of metal, and it took me like 18 months to do. It was like a proper hardcore. It was a set and completed challenge from each Egregore of each nation.
Oh, nice.
And all of the challenges were very, very, because one of the great things about the Egregores is they kind of embody the spirit of the nation. So the challenges that I was getting from each nation were very flavored to that nation. It really, really felt like. It was a really great way of having a tour, really, a really slow motion tour. But it really felt like the quests that you got were really about that nation. So, for instance, the Egregore of Wintermark was like, okay, what noise do trolls' eyelashes make? That one took me 18 months to work. That was the one that took me the longest. The answer is Kaplash. If anyone asks you, the answer is Kaplash. The March Egregore made me do an honest day's work for an honest day's pay, which was basically shave a piece of sugar the size of sugar the size of my head. That took ages as well. But whilst being mocked by marchers, I might add. So,
that's always fun.
Danny's like marchers are the literal. But it was really good. My last bit was to lead Empire as Field Marshal to a glorious victory. Being Field Marshal which is so cool.
That is a good one. That is a really good one. Yeah.
So Keely, who's one of the Egregores in Dawn, she gave me two choices. She's like, you can do the easy option, which is to lead Dawn to victory in a skirmish, or you can do the glorious option. And I was like,
do the glorious option. So at that point, at 18 months, because I need to ask this now, at 18 months, and you're like, right, I've got to lead them to victory, and you've done all this up to this point. Did you feel the pressure of like character death on like, I'm so close to this?
So no, because I think that it would have been a massively cool story to have died at the last hurdle.
Yeah.
So it's the character deaths I don't like are when they are meaningless, or they don't, or you were about to achieve something really, really cool, which is what you're saying there.
Yeah.
But for a Dornish character, that kind of the tragedy of that would have been narratively very satisfying.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because then everyone could role play that and be like, oh,
if I'd just been stabbed by Navarre in the woods and died, I would have been annoyed. But dying doing that would have been cool.
Yeah. I can understand that. It's a difficult one with deaths and people not being happy with their deaths, because you can tell that some people plan it, and it's that's great, but like especially if you're we're supposed to be heroes, we're role-playing being heroes. So sometimes if you like go from a mechanical reason, you're just like, I didn't really want to go. I can understand why people get a little bit upset,
Yeah, but what you've got to do in those situations is to say, okay, what narratively was cool about that?
Mm-hmm.
All right, that is the story. That is the story of the death of my character. That bit there.
Yeah.
Okay, that little interactions where we died holding hands, or that little interaction where I was betrayed and then died. And those cowardly, I don't know, Dornish.
Yeah.
And they ran away, and so and then that becomes the story of your death, And so that then is cool. So it's all about looking at the elements of the story and saying, all right, so how do I circle that for that to be a narrative, a satisfying way to have gone? And then you get excited about your next thing.
What was interesting for us is that, like, when we first came as new players, and I think there was like a big bump in just like numbers as well at Empire, so there was lots of new people dotting about at E1 this year, so there was quite a bit of, you know, death of new players, you know, after that first battle. And yeah, obviously they came back with new characters, but there were these staple characters in Dawn as well that have been there since before we got there, and they were there right up until like E4 this year, and a few of them died, and we were just like, because we this is our 4th event, and we're getting used to seeing these faces and these characters, and we're like, and then they're gone, like, oh, that's I was getting used. They were like, you know, I was getting so used to them being there. I'm like, oh right, okay, they've got to have a new character now, you know.
It's the grief. The grief is it's real, and that's the thing. It's really, so real.
It's so cathartic though. It's nice and contained.
Oh,
you don't let it kind of go, and so it's quite a cathartic thing.
But it affects the story as well, though, like you said. So, like, you know, in the next event, you're just like, all right, you know, well, and then you talk about that character after the fact, and you go, oh yeah, you know, what we're going to do now, this person's gone, you know, and you have to figure it out, because you're figuring out of character, especially if it's someone with like a hat on or something, and you're like, oh, we've lost this person, you know, who's going to be the next one, like what's it's changed the landscape now, you know.
But change is so good, because the only way you're going to get new people to be able to step into hats is either by the previous hat retiring or them dying gloriously on battle. So
you mentioned, so obviously you mentioned the marches, and you had a good time doing your test of metal there. I was going to ask why the marches, but you also mentioned Egregores, so I know that you are an Egregore. So what was the process of you becoming the Egregore?
I moved across the marches because I really love the background of the marches, the entire kind of British folk style. You know, they burned someone in a wicker man, for goodness sake. They're pretty cool. They're pretty hardcore. But the kind of the sort of the characterization of the characters within the nation, but also I'd fought alongside a bunch of marchers, and they were so much fun. And so I was like, okay, I'm retiring this. I'm going to go to the marches. I went to the marches. I went to a couple of the small events. I went to this folk horror one run by Matt and Georgia, which was it was so scary. Oh my God, I almost died. It was so scary. There was sacrifice. There was like giant birch witches. I was like, and then Bryony, a horrible Bryony, grabbed me, killed herself, was like, singing it. And I was like, get her off. Anyway, it was so much fun. It was cool. And then I was like, I'll definitely join the Right Nation. And then, so I did a couple of those. I did a social. And then Claire, who is Claire Evans, she's the Egregore, in charge of the Egregores, and keeps us all on the straight and narrow, and is really, really good at organising. And she contacted me and said, do you fancy it? And I was like, yes. Yes, I very much do. Because one of the things that is the most fun when I was doing Throne Guard, one of the things that was most fun was getting new characters involved, so new people who are new to LARP, getting them involved in the Throne Guard. And I very much enjoyed that. And so this was just like that, really. And kind of the job of the Egregores is, in my opinion, the best job. Because I was crew before. I was on Twitter team, and I moved across to Egregore. And getting people involved is just so much fun. So you've got people who are new, so we get a list of new people, so we can kind of keep an eye and make sure they're all right.
Really? Do you? Okay.
Wow. I didn't know that.
It's really, really good. So it's just like, okay, so who have we got who's new in the nation? And let's just kind of just make sure that they're having fun. And then either, you know, you'll make an excuse to go and role play with them, you'll get them involved in something cool, or they'll come to you and say, listen, I'm not feeling this, or how can I find out this thing? And so you're basically there to help people, which I really enjoy doing. You know, kind of selfishly, I really enjoy it. It gives me a buzz to help other people. So and you're there to, and then the other thing is just to kind of make sure that if anyone has any worries or needs any help, that you're there for them to help them with that. If anyone doesn't know what buttons to push, maybe you could sort of point them in the right direction. So it's facilitation of play rather than leading play.
Okay, yeah, because you are technically a like a character, because you're not really. Would you describe it as an NPC role, or just a player character that's got a little bit of a connection with the metagame?
That's a really interesting question. So you're not like a D&D NPC.
Yeah.
Everything you do is not controlled by the requirements of the story, for instance.
Yeah.
But what you are is totally invested in what would a marcher do? How would a marcher be?
Yeah.
So and what you're doing there is kind of leading by sort of example of okay, what is in every decision I make, I always think, what's the most marcher decision to make in this instance, and then that's the decision I make, unless my character's developed specifically strong opinions about something, in which case, you know, I'll do it from that angle. But usually it is, okay, what's the most marchery thing to do, but also not just what's the most marchery thing to do, but what's going to create the most game for the most number of people, and what people are going to have the most fun with. And that combination is what an Egregore is, basically. It's what's the thing that my nation would do, what's going to create the most interactions for people, okay, what's going to create the most fun, and you take those three things, and then that's sort of that you use that to sort of help dictate your choices. So you're not like a player, you can't just choose what you want, but you still make the choices yourself about what is the best move to make in this situation, but with a view to those. Are you
advised by, are you do you get that feel from what the players are already doing? Because my feeling from the Egregores is that it's not that, you know, that they're looking around and then a load of Dornish players aren't acting, I'll say Marchers or Dornish aren't acting that way. It's not the Egregore's job to be like, oh yeah, that's not very marchery. It's more that they like, I have a feeling that they just like, they're in the nation, they're being surrounded by the nation, and then when someone new comes in and goes, oh, you know, I want to learn about being this part of the marches, are you taking the feedback from the players, what the players are doing, instead of what PD is doing, basically?
Yeah, so if someone comes in and they're like, okay, I want to be a steward, and how do I steward? What I do is I point them at the stewards, and then off they go. And then they are the steward's model, what it is to be a steward. And so it's not about me sort of dictating things. It's about me showing people where to go to find the cool stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's really very much that. So it's I am a facilitator, not a leader.
Yes.
So it's all about I mean, I come from education. That's my background out character. And so it's all about, I use all of those skills to in LARP, basically, to help people to find cool stuff, rather than saying this is the cool stuff and you must do it this way, because that's no good, because no one's going to listen to you. I'm just like a middle-aged lady on a field. Just being Egregore, and it's like, I'm Egregore, listen to me. That doesn't work. That would not work. Slightly. So it's all about finding mischief.
Yeah, it's funny because we like Robin and I were doing our tests. We kind of went to separate nations doing different things, and I just so happened to have a long conversation with a player that turned out to be the Leaguish at Egregore. I learned that after the fact. And Robin was the same in the Imperial Orcs. You know,
the Imperial Orcs signed up with the Egregore.
Yeah, and we learned that after the fact. So yeah, you from our point of view, the Egregores are very much just in the game, because because you can die, right, like the rest of us on the battlefield. You know,
my favourite Egregore death was one of the Brass Coast Egregores. You know, they've got the Tanglemus.
Yes.
Yeah. Tanglemus unwove. They tripped over their own Tanglemus and then they died. That's my favourite one. So,
death by kit.
Death by kit. Yeah. It's a whole different flavour of kit curse.
Well, exactly. Well, it's definitely embodying the spirit of the nation. There's something weirdly poetic there, maybe. I don't know. So you were going to go to the marches anyway.
Yes, I was already in the marches at the point at which Claire said, "Do you fancy Egregoring?" And I was like, "Yes, I absolutely do."
Yeah.
And the other Egregores are just lovely. Oh my God, they're so lovely. So we have a meeting in the mornings to say, okay, these are the things that are going on today. Yeah. What's the feedback? So that story team get an idea of how the plots are being taken, what people are up to in nations, so that they can kind of make sure that the things that are coming from story are not odds with the things that are coming from the players.
And do you do that in your own little nation groups, or is that a whole Egregore
No,
meeting?
it's a whole Egregore meeting.
Right. Oh, that's cool. So you get a real
Yeah,
sense of what's going on.
Yeah.
So is that every day? Is that the kind of Friday, Saturday, and Sunday?
So Saturday, Sunday. And that kind of, so you get, it's really fun as well because you get an idea of what the other Egregores are up to. You're just like, ooh, which is some of my favorite moments of, oh, you did what now?
Yeah. So what's the, like, what is there limits on how much game you can interact with, as in?
Yes.
Yeah, so you can't just be like, so, you know what, I'm an Egregore and I want to be Empress. You can't. Oh, that's an extreme example.
So no hats, no hats, no hoovering of plot. You are there as like a leaf blower rather than a leaf sucker, so to speak. You know, you're there to like blow plot rather than keep it to yourself. And you're not there to have the fun levers, because those levers are for players, not for Egregores.
Yes.
Because otherwise, because otherwise it just won't work. Literally, players are there so they can have fun with levers. So you say, "Hey, these are my levers."
Yeah,
it's not cool.
Yeah, that's the bit. It's even though it's an important part of the game and all these things are going on, it doesn't feel like you're pressured to do that. So it's not as if you can sit down by the fire, because we've sat down on the fire with our Egregore a couple of times in Dawn, and it's not you don't think, oh, you're like I say, an NPC that's trying to do this or trying to do that. It's just like, oh, it's someone who's in the nation, who's playing a character in the nation.
Like, were you saying all this as well? Like, I don't know like anything really about what you said so far about the Egregores and about knowing what's happening, and I'm like thinking to all the interactions that we've had with our Dawnish Egregore, and when we first, like our first ever event, within the first like 15 minutes or so, the Egregore literally was there speaking to me and encouraging me to do something, and I don't even realize what they were doing until now.
I mean, don't get me wrong, we're not all knowing. I mean, you'll pick up the tidbits from the okay, these are some of the stories we've got, these are some of the elements we've got planned. But you can also feedback stuff like, okay, it's summer, it's the spring fair on Saturday at this time. Please, can no major plot that's going to take loads of marches out of the marches happen at that point? So you can kind of do things so that people are able to have the fun of their nation, as well as, rather than them going, I really need to do this thing, this boring political meeting thing, because of because this thing needs to happen next. I really want to be doing this fun thing. And not that I'm saying all political meetings are boring. That's just my own.
But they can be for a lot of people. For a lot of people.
Lots of meetings are very, very fun. I'm a big fan of the military council, for instance. But So you're not having to choose between one or the other. You can have both.
It's such an interesting idea. Like, so because you said, you mentioned like Maelstrom and Odyssey before. Is this something? Is this a developed idea that they've tried out before? Or?
Yeah, I mean, Maelstrom, was good for its time. I hate downtimes. And it has the ugliest downtime system I've ever seen in my life.
You're like the third person that said that to us.
Yeah.
And then Odyssey came sort of next-ish, and I adored Odyssey. It was brilliant. It had no downtime, and it had really simple archetypes. And that's one thing that Empire also has, is really, so Odyssey and Empire have got similarities in that Empire's also got archetypes, and archetypes are really nice shorthand for you to be able to say, these are some things that are important to me. These are some things that I'm likely to need from a stats point of view and from a equipment point of view.
Yes.
And then you get your nation. Then these are the other things I'm important about, and then you get your personal. And it's kind of the yes and approach to LARP is definitely the way to go for that kind of thing.
Gives you a bit more freedom. I think that's why it's so popular, because it's not even though this is the problem with us, Maz, is that we're trying to, like, we've come this year and we just got into LARP and Empire and we love it. And we didn't know what part of the game we were going to enjoy, and we were like, this looks like a great game because it doesn't seem so focused. It kind of reminds me of more of a kind of Game of Thronesy, like Dragon Age style thing, where you can go into political intrigue, or you can go into like things like trading. You can go into just have a drink and have fun and do all sorts of other things. But Robin and I have just like fallen into like combat. So we're like, we froth about combat, and I'm trying to tell people it's not that. It's actually the system isn't focused on that.
And I also am an absolute combat bunny. I love fighting. I've promised Claire no high risk, high combat events because they're the way you go down in downtime and in the long dark. So mostly I'm doing more social events, which is nice, but I do miss the high combat events, I've got to say. If anyone wants an embedded NPC for high combat events, I am available.
Yeah. I mean, I've considered that with the player events, is going, oh, I might go and monster, you know?
Yeah, because I just want to go fight. I don't want my character to die in a player event between events. But I want to go fight.
But I tell you what, the risk of death at a player event for a high combat, and we won't rant about combat too much because Empire's much more than that.
Yes.
But one of the cool things about like high combat, high threats events and that risk of death is it gives you a heck of a lot of spice to your story. And you know, those points where you are literally hiding in a ditch and it's dark and there are half a dozen orcs, like 5 meters from your hiding spot. You're like, if they find me, I am dead. I'm just dead. And you're just there in a ditch. And that is the coolest ditch you will ever hide in.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just like, this is the coolest thing ever. Oh my God, I'm going to die. And you don't get that at a social event. This is a really nice social event. But for me, I live a frisson of danger just to kind of
and you
spice bit of mustard.
You get to show up at E1 and like tell that story as well. You get to in character. You get to be like, oh yeah, we were doing this and then this happened and we were so close. It was so close. You know, that must be awesome. Yeah. So the marches.
Yes, they're great.
Yeah, they are. They really are.
I really like.
There's some really good role players in there. Like it's so much more than the because they do. I'll be fair that they do give off the impression it's like the silly hats and the funny accents.
Like not even at all. So I mean, the great thing about the marches, there's some like top quality role play happens in the marches. Yeah. Everybody really cares deeply about what is going on. Musters are brilliant because I can sort of take a step back. You hear exactly what's going on. You can see those interactions with people. You can see like people glaring daggers across the circle at each other because I don't know, something has happened. And you can you've got your rip-roaring arguments. You've got it's like proper. The marches are not from the outside. I would worry sometimes. And my initial impression of marches, you know, way back when, was that they're a comedy nation, and they're like literally the opposite. What they are is a nation who has who takes everything to the maximum. So they enjoy their stuff the most, but also, you know, they're going to hold the grudges the most, and everything is more of an extreme, which is really, really nice. I've had friends who've been worried about joining the nation because the idea that, you know, holding grudges and being stubborn, those kind of things. But when they've got in the nation, I've really seen that, you know, you get to pick how that works. It's not like you're going to be aggy at everyone unless you choose to be that person. It's the marches is. The marches has just got a core of iron. It's really, really,
Because I knew, so like it's funny because obviously we were in Dawn and you went over to the marches. Now there is a this history there. Now I didn't I did not read a lot of the wiki on any other nation. I came very blind into all the other nations, but somehow I did pick up because I read my own brief for my character archetype. I made sure I read the Knight Errant archetype, and so I understood that. And I read, you know, the look and feel of Dawn, and that was it. So in there somewhere, I must have picked up, because I knew this before I came to the first event, the basic history of the deal with the marches and Dawn. So the marches were like part of Dawn in the past, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're literally named because of our relationship with the Dawnish. We marched with the marchers because
marched away.
Exactly so. Because the marcher history is that who were Yo-folk of Dawn and basically did not feel that the nobles were treating them the way that they should expect to be treated, and so they marched. They left. So the very nation of the marches was created due to an antagonistic interaction with the people of Dawn, who were at that time the same. So there is, and that has kind of continued. So that's sort of antagonistic, and I really like that.
I love it. Yeah, I love it so much. Yeah.
I think it's super. I mean, because fundamentally, Dawn may be useful on the battlefield, but you know, as a marcher, the nobles do not treat their Yo-folk well, and the Yo-folk should be more proud. And I love the virtues. Oh, they're the best. The virtues are amazing, but what pride is there? What pride is there in your position as a yo-folk? You should be able to stand on your own 2 feet. You shouldn't be propping up other people who can barely understand the prosperity and the need for money. I mean, what is going on there, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah.
You know, so you've kind of got the obviously coming from Dawn and having become a Dawnish noble, you're like, what even is money? I don't deal with that. I have people to deal with that for me. And that's a lot of fun to play with as well.
Yeah.
But it's really nice to see that players, as well as it being on a wiki, I love seeing it alive in the field.
Oh yes.
And so we're not like at each other's throats, but there is that kind of healthy competition between the Marchers and Dawn.
Very much so.
As well as a reserved respect, I would say. But I mean, fundamentally, you're wrong, Ens. The Dawn are just so wrong.
Yeah, it's funny because the thing is, I chose Dawn because I feel like Oliver would just be in Dawn anyway. So I feel like I could, because I do kind of just have my feelings on my sleeve a little bit, and going into the mark, because Brock's Toll was the best example of this. Right, so cool. Brock's Toll, I was just like, we got our asses kicked, and they were cheating, and I was just like, what? So I had a little bit of bleed. I was like, what the hell? And then obviously the Marchers were all making fun of us, you know. But it wasn't until I had a lot of Marcher game at E4, and I spent tons of time with the Marchers, and then I realized what the Marchers were saying isn't how they feel, you know. It's all like because they came over for Wassail and we did like a big tug of war, and we kicked their ass, and the Marchers celebrated more than the Dawnish did for us winning. And I was like,
I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Brock's Toll has been Brock's Toll is great because that is kind of a historical antagonism between Dawn and the Marchers, and so it means an awful lot. Who holds Brock's Toll. Brock's Toll's a bridge for people who don't know, and basically it's contested between Dawn and the Marchers, and each year they have a ruck, and whoever wins the ruck gets to keep it. And there's a lot of underhandedness, so you'll find like that when you're agreeing terms, people are very much, you know, the exact term. And then, like, so for the Marchers, for instance, they might be like, oh, this is exact terms, but that means that we can do this thing. And Dawn are just as bad for that as well.
But it's the Marchers are better at pushing our buttons because they're just like, oh, where's your glory? And we're like, well, I'll do it right here, right now. Let's go, you know.
It was last time though, because
everybody's fighting in their trousers. Where's my armor?
What was it? Oliver fought in one event, and I did it the next event. And then in the next event, you know, the rules were, you know, only knives allowed. And Dawn, we were like, we're going to use throwing knives because those are knives. And then they were all cheering, cheats. And the rules could change halfway through. We weren't allowed to use the throwing knives, and it wasn't till after that event when we were in the Marchers pub, and some of them came over, like, oh, you were in Brock's Toll, you know, here, have a drink. Also, we didn't think you were cheating. We thought it was a great idea. We just said it, and then they listened. So sorry. I was like, what?
Yeah.
It's so funny. So Marchers kind of subscribes to the idea that shy bairns get no sweets. So by that I mean, you know, you might have a small chance of something occurring, but that's not a reason to not go do it and see what happens. But
we luck. So our test of metal was basically the same thing. It was because Robin was at one point ahead of me, and I was in the Marchers trying to get love stories in the Marchers, and that's when I really saw how many amazing role players there are in the Marchers, because the whole like, oh yeah, we just love our farms and we have our hats on and all this, and it's all like we're making fun of you. And then I realized how good they were at role playing, because they're role playing people that they're salt of the earth type people. Like they're guarded of what they truly care about. So someone coming and being like, oh, I'm looking for stories of true love, and they all kind of laugh and go, wow, you know, we love our farms and that's it, you know. And then you have to dig it, but they're good role players, and they're making you dig a little deeper as well, you know. I had absolutely fantastic time role playing with them, you know.
It's that kind of thing of, well, why should we tell you? Oh, okay, so we're going to role play now. Brilliant. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm convinced you're a good sort.
Yeah, and it's
tell you Dawnish people how love really works.
Exactly, and it wasn't just a case of, oh yeah, you'd show up, they go, oh, you're Dawnish, but they would go, oh, you're Dawnish, but they wouldn't, you know, you would ask, and if you got past that initial if you got past that initial laughing, you know what it reminds me? Because I moved up to Scotland when I was like 17. I was there for 16 years. The Scots can be like this as well. You know, you go up and you get over that initial, oh, we're laughing at you, but when you stick through it, they're like, oh, you're actually someone worth talking to, and you're welcome in. That's the kind of vibe I was getting from the marches. You know, I would be like, oh, you know, I'm looking for stories of true love, and they're like, oh yeah, well, you know, well, we love our farms, and you know, I love this pig, and they'll tell you a dirty anecdote, and I'm like, all right, okay, I'm like, so you know, so you love your home? Oh yeah, we love our home. And then when you get past that initial part of it, you see they're role playing something a lot deeper.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And that is because, you know, as marchers, what we care about most is the land, is the marches, is because, you know, we've fought for that, and that is ours, and we look after it, and it looks after us. Yes. And then that is, so any talk of mud or pigs or whatever, that is all, I mean, when you actually drill down to it, what that is the interactions between us and our land. Yeah. And that is, I mean, all the most sort of hardcore decision making that occurs in the marches can be brought back to that one thing. And I think that's really, really interesting. And it's not about mud and it's not about pigs, but often the songs are. And so, you know, it's, and it's kind of one of the great things about the march is kind of the humor of it, as well as but people aren't playing it light. They're playing it as marchers who are, you know, making they're playing it as marchers, which I think is really, really good, rather than comedy ours, which could be really irritating. But people don't do that because people actually, you know, their characters really care. Yeah. And I think that really comes across in
it really does
when things are serious and when things are fun.
Yeah, and it's the what, because I said like salt of the earth people, and that seems like a broad term, but yeah, it does feel like if you're living a hard life, as maybe opposed to a Dornish noble, if you're living a hard life and that you are living off the land, and if it's a bad year, you know, or if your home gets that's the thing, and then when you start digging, you realize that this marcher has lost their farm, you know, because of something that's happening in the wider empire, and how much that has affected them, you know.
And it's brilliant as well, because sometimes the reason that something has been flooded, or you've literally lost, so that's why we care so much about territory, obviously, because it's land. But so for instance, there were some player interactions at the last event at the ritual circle, shall we say, and that resulted in sort of flooding and those kind of things, and look, it's flooding and droughts and those kind of things, but that literally been caused by players. And so for the players of the marches, they're like, oh, and you know, and that's when you get your rough music, that's when you get people going on, oh. So there was this brilliant thing where someone threatened to quickening cold meat a marcher territory. And quickening cold meat, do you know what that is?
No, I don't.
Heard of it.
Basically where they raise the dead bodies of the people in that territory to fight alongside the army. So it gets you extra people.
Yes.
But one of the really, really important pieces of the marches is their burial rites, and you know, you go into the earth, and you know, and so it's like super like core part of the marches. So quickening cold meat is not good. Very much not good. And when people are saying, do this thing, or we will quickening cold meat your territory, then it all gets a bit spicy, which is really, really fun. Yeah. And it turned out to be like slightly, I mean, it wasn't, I'm not going to go as far as saying a misunderstanding, but maybe a miscommunication of sorts. But there was like, you know, it was my first ever mob. And well, as a marcher,
as a marcher,
we won't probe.
we got this mob together, right? And we're going to rough music this person. Well, that was my plan. But I was like, right, off we go. We're going to go do this thing. What are we going to do? I'm thinking people are going to say rough music. And they're like, killer! I know.
Whoops.
Too far. Me on the spot. I accidentally got a mob to murder a player. It was fine. I did it. It was fine. 20 seconds there, I was like, I've got to talk him down.
Yeah.
Please don't kill us.
Well, that's
okay, let's calm down.
Yeah. That's the thing. Mob mentality is a real thing, and like bleed in roleplay can come in all these forms, you know. And I guess, you know, it's something that it wouldn't happen often, but yeah, if you're suddenly part of a mob and you've all got each other riled up, and you're like, right, let's go do something, and then you get there and you're like, well, we're here, we better do something about it.
It's like the Matilda Fisher stuff? I mean, did you hear the big shenanigans going on?
Okay, so yeah, all I heard was something happened in the Senate, right?
Yeah.
And I think there was a mortality with a Marcher General.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of what I heard, because
Yeah.
I was looking for story. Go on, sorry, Maz.
That's all right. So basically what happened was they had Matilda. So one of our territories is obviously at the moment fairly in dispute, shall we say. The orcs have put on basically, I'm going to call them a puppet. Obviously, this is all with very much my in-character head on at this point.
Yeah.
Who they're saying they're a marcher. I mean, they lost the cousins war. Anyway, who's a marcher, and that they are going to be, it's going to be an independent marcher. They're not really, because, you know, they're literally, well, in character, I believe they are puppets of, and the orcs. And so the idea was that this person was coming to Anvil to negotiate the terms of the deal where the Empire would back off from the March territory and let her have it. Obviously, the marchers were not very happy about this. So at the point at which they went to the Senate to have these negotiations, the whole of the marchers came down and were quite loud around the Senate. But some marchers had decided to take it upon themselves to deal with this once and for all. And so they literally, there was a thing where they leapt over, you know, the wooden barrier between the Senate and the viewing gathering.
Yeah.
Leapt over that, swords were drawn, there was some fighting.
Oh, wow.
Obviously the marchers, the whole of the marchers wasn't in on this, obviously. It was a group of marchers who decided to take this upon themselves. Anyway, there was some shenanigans. Marchers were unsuccessful in their attempt, and a character, the militia were very good, I would say. I love the militia. Hello, militia, you're lovely.
Yeah.
The militia were very good. You get so much game with the militia. I love them. So it kind of ended in the result of this character, but not through any militia intervention or anything like that. Okay. So it wasn't, militia did not kill a marcher, which is the rumor going around. Militia did not kill a marcher.
Yeah, right. I see. There we go. You heard it here. You heard it here. Clear that up. That was the reason for the podcast.
So yeah, so it was great. It was brilliant. I mean, there were so many deeply in character unhappy people, deeply unhappy, and then after timeout, we're like, that was so cool. Yeah. So
it really says something about the march. So one of the other things as well at the start of the weekend, because I spent a lot of time in the marches with my quest, and it was difficult. I will say it was difficult in the marches. It was difficult to get this because I had to get a story of true love by Dornish standards. So yeah, it was tricky. So I was going backwards and forwards, but you know, from everyone I spoke to, a lot of the time I would just be like, no, you might want to get that one. There's definitely a story there. There's definitely a story there, and you go around. So I did have to speak to a lot of people. However, by the end of the weekend, people then recognized me in the marches. So as I was, walking through, they'd be like, "Oh, Godric, how's your quest going?" I'd be like this. But yeah, when the marches lost one of their generals, a lot of them would say, "Oh, how's your quest going?" "Oh, well, I was like, "Oh no, I heard what happened," and they were like, "Oh yeah, well that's probably because we really love this general, and that's a lot of the answers I got was that we love our farms, we love our land, we love this one figurehead." Whereas when you talk to the other nations, "Oh, I'm looking for stories of true love," they have a personal story that they have, whereas the marchers just seem like this unit, like this family unit.
There's lots of personal stories out there. I can think of like 3 or 4 that would probably suit you. That I'm not going to tell you about in character. Those relationships are absolutely there. But generally, they're like, well, they're personal, and marchers take everything very personally. And rather than like Dornish, where the hearts on the sleeves, they're very, very demonstrable.
Opposite,
they're like,
everybody
come to Glory Square and must announce my true love. Whereas the marchers will just show their love through their interactions rather than.
What the fascinating thing I found was that as I stuck, because at first it was like, oh yeah, who's this Dornish person asking us about our like stories of true love? But eventually I was actually getting interest, because people would be like, oh, go speak to that person. And I was getting the impression that they wanted to know the details too. So I spoke to this one.
Oh, we're such awful gossips. If we're like, oh, hang on, someone's going to do the hard work and get the good goss on this, right, Godric?
Yeah.
That person over there.
Yeah, because I took, so when, because I basically tagged on to the wassail, right? So, well, you might be, you're way better explaining what wassail is, because I was just like, I think it's a harvest festival thing that they go around. What is the wassail?
And so wassail is all about, kind of showing the fruits of the bounty of the marches and sharing that with other nations, and for them to, because fundamentally the marches are the breadbasket of the Empire, and without us, you'd all starve to death.
Yes.
So it's kind of it's kind of the joyful celebration of the fruits of the land and the fruits of the harvest, and also it's when marchers kick back, they really, really do. So it's all about kind of sharing not only the bounty of the land, but also of the people, and looking at those celebrations. Hence the tug of war in Dawn, for instance. And about the songs and the stories of the marches, and about the music of the marches. And so it's all about sort of sharing all those things. And someone used that opportunity, because they're cheeky, to basically give, there was the Egregore Tea Party, which I was not a part of because I was on the wassail, but there's the Egregore Tea Party, and someone gave all the Egregores some very dodgy stuff.
Oh, really?
There was a certain amount of kickback where people were like, oh dear. The Egregores meeting the next morning was, they did what? So that was fun.
Yeah, the wassail. Because I'm jealous of wassail and some of the things that the other nations have, like the like High Guard have like their Day of the Dead or whatever it is, where they all go around, and the Navari have this thing where they get all hyped up about spring and they all go around. So as a previous Dornish player, have you found that, like, I'm like, this is something that Dorn should, because everyone, they all go around saying, oh, this is what we bring to the Empire, aren't we great? And at the end of E4, I was just like, why don't we have any, do we not bring anything to the Empire?
For Dawn, it's things like Night of Flowers. Again, that's very much more personal. I love Night of Flowers shenanigans.
Yeah.
But Dawn is where Dawn and March are different. Dawn's very individuals, March is very people.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a big difference. And so Dawn are very much about sort of personal glory. What do you bring to the marches? What do you bring to the Empire? So we bring glory.
Yeah, and it's difficult, yeah.
And that's glory, whether it's martial, glory, whether it's bardic, glory, whether it's. But the big thing, and one of the things that sort of when as an Egregore and as players, one of the things we always need to keep a lovely eye to is the virtues, because the virtues are an excuse for role play. They are the best excuse for role play. And you take virtues, you take nations, you mash the two together, and you have the most fun in the Empire.
Yeah.
So, but things like for you guys, I mean, glory, it's not a virtue, but it used to be a virtue.
Yeah.
And you bunch of heretics.
Wow.
Yeah.
If you look at your yo folk, prosperity is often a thing. Pride, oh my gosh, pride, and that's something that Dawn and the March have in common, is that pride is an important virtue. And the Marchers are very proud people, as are the Dornish.
Yeah.
And that can lead to all sorts of mutual respect and loggerheads.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, the quest we were on for love stories, and it was. I mean, that's why it was quite a good test. It turned out to be a very good test, because as we started going around and learning as players as well about the other nation, which is why it was a good test. A bit like your one was, it sounds, where you had to do a tour. We started to realize that. Yeah, everyone has a very, very different. We're literally the only ones that wear that type of love on our sleeves, but it's a very important. I mean, it's a very important part of just human nature, and in this fantasy setting, and of human and orc nature, and it's in every single nation. But yeah, it's not. It's something. I felt like we were giving something to the other nations, even just by talking about it.
Yeah. But I mean, how beautifully written is the system that, and I do think Empire had, and the fact that they are willing to kind of tweak things as well as they go along. But how beautifully written, the original scaffolding of the system is,
Yeah.
where you've got those shortcuts to be able to hang things on, to be able to say, okay, this is what it is, as well as this is very much what it isn't.
Yeah.
So that you can say, so as a new player coming in, you can go dunk 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 dunk. There's my character. Dunk, that's and be confident in yourself that you're hitting the right marks.
Yes.
To be able to have the most fun,
Yes.
because playing it to the hilt, being this is, I am a marcher. Playing that to the hilt rather than being, well, I'm a marcher, but no, I'm a Dornishman. But I do this thing. I'm not really into glory. Also, I'm a noble, but I quite like money. And that really kind of it dilutes what should be really, really cool.
Yes.
But players really recognise that, and so it's as a egregore, watching players be able to say, no, this is what it is to be a marcher.
Yeah.
And you're just like, okay, because the reason why they know it is because they've used it to have as hooks for their character. So it's a good shortcut to really feeling unique.
Yeah.
As a nation.
Yeah, as a nation, yeah.
Beige.
Which is very different from a lot of other games. I imagine would be a smaller game, other LARP systems, but specifically things like D&D, where you are playing like the dwarf who's not like the dwarf because he left his home and now he's out. He doesn't like being a miner. He's going off to do adventure. So you're like it's totally okay to play against type, and people usually do in D&D. Whereas, like you said, the juicy thing about Empire is getting the type and then leaning into the type.
Leaning into the brief. Yeah, exactly. I mean,
people do it automatically, like you said, so it's obviously fun. Yeah. So Robin, go on. Sorry. Go on.
Robin, I was going to ask, what's your favourite interaction that you've had with the marchers?
Get ready.
100% was for me anyway, was Brock's tool when we at this point it was, I think we were like one each side at this point, and this was going to decide which one was going to win. And I was like, oh, do you know what, let's just charge. We're done. Let's just charge at them with what we got to lose. Let's do it. And I had this fight with one of the marchers, and we basically just both, it was one hit and you're down, and we both just made contact at the exact same moment. We looked at one another and went, we're both out, aren't we? We're like, yeah. So we keep fighting for the fun of it. We're like, yeah. We were just mucking around. And then afterwards, when they kept coming up to me being like, let's go get a drink. That was amazing. You did this and you did that. And it was basically all that sort of combat interaction. And also their ability to make the best mead I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, the mead. Yeah, that mead was so good.
My liver is still recovering.
Yeah, it was like a proper session mead as well. It was just like, you could have a lot of it. It was good.
Oh my god, yeah. What about you, Oliver? Because you've had a lot of really cool interactions with Mark.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like one specific one, but yeah, I think it was because I enjoyed Brock's Toll, and there was basically like 2 rounds where it was just me versus 4, and the marchers can fight. They know their specialization, and they really lean into it, so they can definitely fight. They are good fighters, especially when you look past, like, say, the hats and the shorts and all that, and they can really go for it. But I think in general, like at E4, after all these little interactions where you're like, especially just me as a player, just knowing, I kind of knew, oh yeah, there's like this old beef between them. And there, like you said, there's a bit of head butting there, but then spending a lot of time at E4 in the Marcher camp, just having errands to run in there, and then at the end of E4 coming back, and then people were like, "Oh, Godric," they weren't like, "Oh, here's this Dornish idiot again." They were just like, "Oh, Godric, oh yeah, how are you getting on? How are you doing?" And it was just like, and being welcomed, not because, oh yeah, you're more like a Marcher than a Dornish person. I was role playing very Dornish, but they were like, "Oh, you're our friend. You're welcome here in this thing."
Yeah.
I think that's my favorite. That's my favorite interactions with the Marchers, most definitely. But yeah,
they're so welcoming, and just like, do you not feel as well that like when you walk through through the marchers and everything, you actually feel this sort of, it's just this almost like this sort of joy, even though there's so much role play and emotional role play, there's so much joy there as well, and it's hard to not feel happy when you're there.
It's funny, joy, but at the same time, I don't feel as at ease as I do in my home camp. You know, it's still, I still very much feel like, okay, I'm sticking out like a sore thumb. You know, there's.
Yeah. When you go into Dawn, you really know you're in Dawn. But when you go into the march, and you know, there's a lot of flags and those kind of things. It's a very kind of. And when you go into the marches, you really know you're in the marches.
Oh, yeah.
And just, I mean, like the spring fair is just, I've got to say, one of my favourite times of the year for the marches. And when you walk along there, and it's like a village fete,
Yeah.
but like on marcher terms, and it's just really lovely. And you know, and so. But I love the plot will lean into that as well. So, for instance, we had the spring fair, and boggarts are attracted by kind of merriment, and so we got ourselves some unintended boggarts, which is always fun to play with because boggarts are problematic sometimes. You're just like, no, there are boggarts. Oh no.
So what do the boggarts do mechanically then?
So the thing is, it was really, really nice because the March players got in their packs before the event. There's been a lot of this type of magic around. We've got there are more boggarts than usual. Boggarts, so they're kind of a bit mischievous. They love merriment. They're drawn to kind of music and merriment, but they're quite quick to anger if you're not giving them what they fancy. What you basically, and you know, there's the old tale that if you can lead a boggart all the way through your village and out the other side, it'll be good luck. So some players took it upon themselves when they discovered boggarts in camp, took it upon themselves to lead the boggarts all the way through the nation, kind of making sure they were happy, getting them to throw sponges at people in stocks, those kind of things, you know, making sure they were happy, get them all the way through and out the other side and onto somewhere else, so they palm the boggarts off on another nation. And that's really good luck for the whole of the marches at that point, you know, and that's the story. So that's they're actually called in the marches, they're called huck-ups.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
So the tale of the old huck-up, fuck-up. But yeah, they're called huck-ups, so getting the huck-ups in is really, but huck-ups are basically quite boggarty around the edges. So yeah, really, really fun.
Yeah, it's funny how like you said, they're quite kind of, they do things on their own terms. So like going back to the wassail thing, I was like, I kind of tagged along with wassail because I was like, because a few people said, people will be in high spirits. That's probably a good time to maybe get information from them. So it's funny because some people were in very, everyone was in high spirits. One or two people were like a bit, they was like looking at me being like, this is our, this is our thing. You go following us around. I was like, but I ended up going and speaking to, going back to the love story thing and wanting to know the details. I spoke to this bard. And I was like, do you have any songs, like any march songs about love? You know, because I thought if I can't get a story, maybe I can get a song. And he was like, no, but you might want to go speak to. And I'm like, it's the same stories. People were pointing me to the same person, the same story. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, I tell you what. I was like, if I get the information. Do you want to know the information? Because every single marcher knows that there's a story here, but no one knows any of the details. And because they love this person so much, or these two people so much, they know they're definitely in love. And I'm like, but no one knows the story because everyone's obviously keeping it close to their chest, the people involved. And I was like, well, if I bring you the story, would you make a song about it? And he was like, yes, would you do that? Like, I still haven't got the story yet, but I'm just like, there we go. Marches do. That's so cool. They are into true love. I've got you. So that was a really good interaction, which hopefully maybe that story thread isn't over yet. Yeah, so Maz, we've done a fair few episodes of this podcast. Now it's just since we've started having guests on. Robin was like the other day and been like, we need to give me and our guests a toilet break in some of these. I'm like, yeah, okay.
I can't last that long, everyone.
So those will get into getting the hour and 40-minute mark, and then we finish, and then Robin's like, I need the loot.
Running through the house.
Right. So Maz, you're involved in another. Well, I'm assuming you'd say it was a small LARP system.
Yeah, well, it's not quite a LARP. It's called Locksmiths Dream.
Okay.
And it's, if you think kind of immersive theatre, luxury
right.
night
Okay.
getaway, a cult scavenger hunt. But it's I'd say it's LARP adjacent.
LARP adjacent.
That's the
Okay.
way to put it.
Okay.
So it's quite one of the things about it is you can kind of lean into the LARP aspect as much or as little as you like.
All right.
So it's a 17th century manor house called Treowen, which is basically kind of seemingly trapped in the 1920s, and you've got narrative mysteries, and you've got puzzles, and you've got a 7-course banquet.
Oh, wow.
And it's basically the idea is that that the gods meet at a specific place where the walls are thin to like the manses, basically, which is where the gods hang out. The gods meet, and then it's your job afterwards. You're hired by a sponsor, an occult sponsor. So it might be like, I don't know, the Kerisham Review, and they're a magazine of sorts. Or it might be that you're like the Lighthouse Institute, and they're more about kind of protecting secrets, whatever. But you're hired by a sponsor to go to this place and to sift through the what is left, the little bird song, the histories of the house and previous inhabitants and those kind of things. But the house is populated by this curious staff who are like really deeply connected to the property. And it's all about trying to find out sort of bits and tidbits of story and put your narratives together to find your what we call grand bird song, which the big narrative elements, or to kind of look through where you're doing like a little occult scavenger hunt, trying to find sort of smaller elements of it to create a whole. So you've got the House of the Sun, which is during the daytime, and then after dinner you've got the House of the Moon. And in the House of the Moon, that means the walls to the other place are very thin, and so you have to wear a mask, which take on a protective identity, which is the identity of someone who used to inhabit the house.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of the narrative is about those people. And so when you take on their identity, so to speak, the staff in the house will treat you as that person. Most of them.
Yeah.
And then you kind of go into the House of the Moon, and you're trying to find these tidbits. You're following the mystery and following the narratives and following the clues to find out what happened, but also what remains and what doesn't, and what can you affect change on. And some of this happens inside the house, or if you get lucky / unlucky, it might be outside the house. There was a fabulous incident that I can't tell any of the details of. But it involves someone going out into the night to do this thing, and me going with them, and the rain was slashing like that. This man was having the time of his life. He really enjoyed it.
Amazing.
It was really fun. And in order to set that thing up, whilst they were at dinner, I had to go out and I had to do some things with some objects and put them in the right place and so on and so forth. I dropped one small objects, about so big. I dropped it. It was pitch black at this point remaining. I don't notice I've dropped it until I go to the place where I meant to put it. And then I'm like,
uh-oh.
20 minutes with a lantern looking for this thing in the dark. I found it. It was all fine. And the thing is, it wasn't a replaceable thing, because it was a thing that had been seen in the house during the daytime. So it had to be this exact thing. I'm like, oh God.
Oh man. Oh man.
Picturing you in the rain with this lantern, looking very atmospheric from the windows, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
A cape and a bonnet in the rain with a lantern, looking for the thing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It sounds like a really so it almost sounds like a bit of a LARP gateway type thing, right? Because you're not because I'm assuming you don't like pick a character, you just come in as yourself. But then it sounds like everyone, like it sounds like the NPCs are basically LARPing, right? Would that be
Yes.
a thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then halfway
So-
through, you're putting the mask on, so then you're like, oh, give this role play a try, you know?
Yeah.
and the thing is, you can choose to you can lean into it or you can not. So I find the majority of LARPers who come lean into it like crazy, and that's brilliant. And then some of the people are more into kind of the observing the narrative. It's more of an interactive theatre style experience.
Yeah.
And then the people who are really into like Sherlock Holmesing it will Sherlock Holmes heck out of it. And get a lot from it that way. So it really is, you can do it, you can approach it from sort of 3 different angles and be as satisfied at the conclusion.
Yeah.
So it's very much I would say it's a personalized journey option. So basically, so in education, for instance, the reason why I use personalized, in education, you can either teach the whole class one thing, or you can differentiate it into 3 groups, or you can personalize it for the individual. And so this is very much about personalizing it for the individual. So the number of guests is really quite small. So we've got 11 rooms. And what's that? That's like,
so you stay in the house, you
stay in the house. Like 4-poster beds, those kind of things. You know,
wow.
Oak-clad halls. You know, you can get cocktails made by a really cool guy called Dom, who makes he's the chef, but he makes really good cocktails. It's really, really fun. But yeah, so the idea is, you know, that each year 5 of your secret gods meet to exchange secrets, and then you go and you see what of those secrets you can pick up.
Right. So when obviously if you're staying there and there's stuff going on, is there a specific like, oh, this is when it's happening, or can you kind of do your own thing and go up to your room and, you know, the thing carries on?
I mean, yeah. So you can do your own thing, and again, it's a matter of sort of seeing what the web of narrative is and what you can tug and tease at. So from a LARPing point of view, from LARP point of view, it's like, okay, what is the narrative here? What can I tug and tease on? What happens if I pull this lever? Oh my god, that happened.
Oh, that happens.
And so you're, as well as sort of doing the occult scavenger hunt, which basically is scavenging stuff, but it's not necessarily physical. It's like elements of story. I mean, there are physical elements to it as well.
Yeah.
Or you can sort of like trade gossip and bird song and take a tour of the grounds and kind of get ideas for the story from there. You can, decide whether you want to believe what the inspector says or not, you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so when you explore the house, you find out not only the other guests, but also other people who can enlighten. So, you know, you can work together with other guests. So, oh, we've got the same sponsor. Let's do this thing together. Or, oh, I don't like the Clio, not go that way. Or, so there's always a member of staff about who is on hand to answer kind of questions and kind of help you in the right direction if you really need it. So more to guide efforts than to point directions. But it's.
And you're saying it's in the, so it's like set. Well, the cat. So it's a bit like displaced from time. Is the thing you're getting across? So is that then? So, you know, because do people need any type of costume, any type of?
So you don't need to. If you want to dress for dinner in the House of the Moon, you're really encouraged and welcome to. Yeah. But you don't need to. So we had sort of, I would say a split of about 40-50% did and the others didn't, and that's absolutely cool. And that often would dictate how much they then lean into the LARP element of it as well.
Yeah, so it's not as if you need to have a full 1920s get up to
not at all. Not at all. And it's in Tryowen, which is this lovely 17th century grade 1 listed manor house in Monmouthshire. So
beautiful.
It's really nice.
Yeah, beautiful. And then you get to go around like how big are the grounds then?
Big enough to electrocute yourself.
All right, yeah.
I'll tell you about that one in a bit. There's a pear orchard, and there's the ornamental gardens, and there's the ha-ha, which is like a drop like that, which stops the sheep climbing up onto the mountain.
Oh right, yeah, no,
I've
got it in my head now.
It goes down to a lake, and it's really the grounds are gorgeous.
Amazing. Like you said, the game goes on outside as well, so it's like
exactly. There's the near electrocution experience on haha, where I one of the during dinner, during lunch, someone let us know that the just before lunch that the electric fence that stops the sheep. I mean, there's a big wall that stops sheep, but also an electric fence. That the electric fence that stops sheep seems to be.
What did these sheep do?
But I was like, okay, I'll go and have a look. So me and another member of staff went down and had a look, and the end of it had dropped off, so it just needed hooking back on.
Yeah.
So what I did, you know, that thing where you just touch it really quickly with the back of your hand to see if it's live or not.
Yeah, pulsing. Yeah.
So I did that. It was fine. It's not. I'm like, oh, it's not live. That's fine. So then I picked up and went zing.
Yep.
Yeah.
It just went down wrong through my chest into a leg. I was like, but basically, it turns out that they're live every 5 seconds.
Yeah. They pulsed them.
Yeah, you can set the pulses. You see, so it's not always live.
I mean, no permanent harm done, but hey, kids, don't touch electric fences.
No, they can. Yeah, they can be pretty
Yeah,
painful.
pretty
I
nasty.
might actually fixed it by liberal application of, not touching it, and kind of hooking it. But yeah, don't touch electric fences.
So, how long have you been running this event then?
So our first, the beta event was in October. So, and it was sold out, and it had really good reviews, like so good. You know, when there's reviews and like people put an extra star and written superb,
Fantastic, yeah.
So we had fab reviews, which was really nice. Really kind of, because we did, there's nothing like it. So we weren't sure whether it would work or not, but we thought we'll give it a go. And see
It seems quite unique, yeah.
It seems unique, but it seems like it involves so many elements that so many people can get into and actually enjoy in their own way. It sounds incredible. And the 1920s sort of feel of it is just.
So, I mean, it sounds like a bit of a gateway, doesn't it? Because it's like sometimes you talk to people who aren't into role play or LARP or anything like that, and they say, "Oh, I'm going to this murder mystery night," and you're just like, there needs to be something in between that and and getting people into LARPing.
Yeah, I mean, it can absolutely be used as a gateway, but it's not less than a LARP, if that makes sense. It's oh my gosh, so many moving parts. Sometimes I feel like a mad woman with red string. And so
connecting all the things.
And so it's like, well, there's this element which means it needs this clues, and oh right, I need to make this clue. Okay, I'm going to go use my Glowforge, which is on in the background at the moment, to physically make this clue out of wood, and then and then this clue is going to be. So I really have like the thing of creating stuff that is then actually used in the world, which is really fun. So from personal,
So have you ever done a game system yourself before, or is this your first foray into this?
So this is my first foray into this. Others in the group have done.
Yeah.
But one of the good things about it being that way, and to get Ivan, who's the operations guy, who's basically he's like the creative genius. He's the guy that makes it all work on the ground.
Yes.
So we've got people who do the writing and those kind of things. But Ivan's job is to get everything. He is Mr. Red String. Get everything together and then show. Just like peek the curtains back so people could be like, "Oh, let's see what's in there," but without them knowing without them seeing the mechanisms behind it. And that has been and I think doing it that way and not coming from like an escape room background or a murder mystery background has been really, really good. So I think because it allows you to sort of think a little more outside of the way things have been done previously.
Well, exactly. 'Cause you can't contain them, because it's hard enough if you're like doing a tabletop like D&D game and you're the DM and it's like, well, they could go anywhere. But in that situation, you have to make something off the spot, which is stressful enough. But yeah, if you have a group of people, you're like, okay, well, how many people do we need on staff to make sure that they can literally go, anything can happen, and we'll be able to like wrangle it all in. That must be quite a weird process to go through to kind of decide.
I think having a staff who are the same from game to game as much as possible, but also who have time before events. So we had a week run up before we did the event where we stayed in Treoin and we got everything ready and we kind of sorted out the little details and so on. And actually, apart from anything, paying for people's time to do that rather than it being a voluntary affair, and I think that is
Yeah.
that has been really, really useful, apart from anything, to show people that we value
Yes.
their contributions, and the
100%,
Locksmiths
yeah.
Dream wouldn't be what it is without the actors in it, and without the writers, and without the puzzle creators, and the cook, and the cook's helpers, who are all fab. And without all of these people, it wouldn't be what it is. So it's very much been, although kind of Ivan is puppet master as regards all the details, it is a different game because the people that are involved in it. It's a different experience and event because the people involved in it than it would otherwise be.
Oh, that's that's it. Even if you could, like, say you've got the cook involved as like an MP. Do you call them MP? Would you call them NPCs or just staff?
Staff?
Just staff.
Yeah, staff.
Yeah, staff. Yeah, I get you. So, but literally everyone that the players or the people going interact with, they are house staff then, or is there or is there outside kind of characters that come in as well?
Yeah, so they're house staff, and then you've got the dailies, and the dailies are people who don't, members of staff who don't sleep in house, because as my character puts it, I play a daily, as my character. So my job is basically to make sure that everything's running fine. So I'm a house servant basically. But she always says, oh, you don't sleep in it overnight. Well, my ma says never sleep overnight.
Just to freak everyone out.
My God.
Oh, you're not sleeping overnight, are you? Ooh, great. That's a choice, sir.
So you've had the beta event in October.
In October, and then we've got 4 more in December. In fact, a couple of weeks' time is our first 2, and then we booked 2 weeks together, and we run a midweek and a weekend. But for next year, considering how pooped out we were after the beta. Next year we're going to be doing a set and then another set with a gap in between.
Right.
So
okay.
Recover a bit, because it's quite physically demanding, especially for characters who get about the place, like Rick, who plays the Hawthorne, who's the house butler. He, the servant, basically. He does a number of miles walking around, shall we say.
Yeah.
So like a significant, he gets his steps in. And it's actually, so for those characters that really get their steps in, it's nice to have not run the 2 weeks together. So we ran the 2 weeks together. We're running them this time in December. But now knowing what we know, we've booked it differently for next year.
Yeah. So in the beta, because I'm already like thinking, so have you got, how many people roughly do you have as players or as participants?
So there are 11 rooms, and most of the rooms have 2 people in, apart from one of the rooms that has 4 people in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did you find?
Well, actually, no. There's 22 guests, because actually Rose and Portico, if you count those 2 separate ones, they've got 2 in each room. So yes, 22 guests.
So did you find they all did things in a group, or did they all scatter?
So you saw people kind of get together and maybe then make an alliance with someone. They'd do a thing, or someone say, "I just don't understand. This thing said to do this thing, and I didn't see what that did." And then someone say, "Oh, did you try this thing?" And they're like, "Oh, that thing." And then they'll go and try that thing, and then they're like, "Oh, that thing really works. Yeah, bro." And then someone will say, "Oh, you didn't do that thing, did you?" Oh, you better speak to the inspector. That was not good. That was not good. No, speak to the inspector.
Oh, wow.
The inspector say, "You did what?" And that was quite fun. But the other person sort of went with them and was looking through the door like that.
So if I was to go into something like that, I'd be like, right, I'm off on my own. Bye.
So you can cause total shenanigans.
No, just because the way I do things, I'd be like, I can do this all on my own, and then after like 4 or 5 hours of wandering around the entire place on my own, then I would probably try and find someone to be like, help.
Yeah. So people tend to work sort of with people who have the same sponsors as them, or but alliances where sorry, I'm just stopping the dog licking his bandages. Where things change, people's motivations might change, and so they might decide to make different alliances, those kind of things.
So have you still for this upcoming block, have you still got spaces for people?
I mean, December's filling up like crazy. We've got sort of a couple of rooms available still. Yule weekend, we've got the most rooms available, and that also has as a consequence, has a little bit of a discount at the moment.
Ooh, nice.
So your weekends are time to book. And then we've got already people doing pre-bookings for next year.
Yeah.
So and we've got pre-booking at the moment. So if you basically get £100 off for pre-booking before the end of December. So.
Nice. Well, we'll put all the information down in the
Yeah.
down in the description. Yeah, good luck with it, man. So hopefully we'll manage to get to it one day.
I'm really hopeful you guys come, because it is a lot of fun. But it's unique. I haven't done it like before, and I was so happy with the so happy with the reviews. So it's like kind of makes your heart. It makes your heart. So I was part of that.
Yeah, especially when you work so hard on something as well, and especially when you're like, right, we've done all this work, we've worked this hard, and then after you see the fruits of your labor, you're just like, oh.
Yes. The detail that you put into it sounds absolutely incredible, and even just down to these little bits of going around trying to find clues and get them set up for people, and electrocuting yourself. It all sounds like you've done so much work to get this to work, and it's just wonderful.
Thanks. I will say one thing, that is that one of the things I make are like they're called spintria, which are basically little coins, and you can make ones that are worded and ones that are silver. The ones that are doing the stock take on it, because I did stock take just today to say, okay, how many more do I need to make for each one? And the ones that have been the most pocketed are the silver spintria, which if you have a look on them, on one side it looks, it's very nice, and then on the other side there are two people doing naughty things, and those are the ones that have been pocketed the most.
Yeah, I'd probably pocket that as well.
Yeah.
The heads up.
I have to make the most of the next event.
Yeah, fantastic. Oh yeah, I'll put the link to the Locksmiths Dream down in the description below. Thanks, Maz, for coming on. I can't wait until Empire, and then we can interact in the field and do some marcher shenanigans. It's weird because this is our first long dark, so it was like. So
are you planning small events for your long dark? Then are you doing any?
Yeah, we don't know. That's the thing. We put a lot of time and economic resources into getting into LARP, because we don't do anything by half. So we were just like, bell tent, everything, let's go. And
now we need noble kits.
we're in Gloucestershire, so yeah. So there are. I mean, I think actually this weekend there's actually a Dawn-based one just down the road from us. So our thing is, even though people are still convincing us otherwise, because my character's noble now, I'm like I've giving myself a while to get new kit together, and it's not a straightforward kit. So I kind of want to premiere this version of my character now, with all my noble kit.
£1 million says that a lot of people have said, well, you're Dornish, wear your knight errant stuff.
Yes. Yes, they're like, oh, it's fine, just wear your night errant stuff, and I'm like, no, I want to. If I'm gonna,
but you want to be glorious, right? You're just like, I just want to make a glorious entrance.
Exactly.
I want to look so noble.
They're like, oh, it's just a ball, and if people ask, just say you're getting something commissioned. I'm like, no, if I'm gonna go to a ball, I'm gonna be like, I want to be like, just come through the door, all fabulous, be like, hey,
I'm here.
Here's Lord Godric. Get a yo folk to announce me and everything. So
carry him down the stairs.
Yeah. so that's part of the reason as well. But I think we are looking at, there's a few that people have mentioned. And it's funny, depending on who you speak to as well, because we were speaking to Jamie, who's in Navarre, and obviously the ones he was recommended were very Navarre focused and fighting Valorn, and people have been, oh, you should come to this one. So I think we might go to one, or see if we can get to one definitely before E1. Just to get the hype going.
We've got one thing that we're doing in like March, which is going to be obviously right before E1.
Yeah.
What's it in
it's the I don't know. It's more just like
it's an unsanctioned Dornish event.
It's like a birthday sort of celebration type of event.
Nice.
Yeah.
So it's like
oh, that's good. Kind of like dribble it back into kind of getting rather than
exactly. Just a bit of sparring, a bit of drinking around campfires.
So all the people are there that I've got a game with that I need to do things with. So I'm like, oh, that'll be good. Just right before you won.
I'm doing Kingstoke Wassail in like January, which is it's so cold, but it's up in Yorkshire. It takes me like 6 hours to drive there, but
Oof.
it's like totally worth it.
Yeah.
It's really fun. It's in this old a museum basically, which is basically a village. So yeah, it's really fun.
Nice.
So
No,
that's
we definitely. I mean, that's the thing as well, because we've been like producing media for LARP as well. It's just so obviously everyone's going, oh, you should go to this one, go to this one. I was like, there's not enough time in the year to go and all this stuff. I totally want to try it, because we want to try other LARP systems as well next year, hopefully as well, and go to a few different things and kind of broaden our horizons.
So what have you got your eye on next year? Have you got any ideas?
I mean, for me personally, I mean, I quite like the look of the iLARP one, the Western one.
Yes! Oh my god, it's going to be so cool.
Yeah.
I'm not. I might be crewing that one because it's only like an hour. Yeah, I mean, I'm massively biased because Kitty and Johnny are just the loveliest people ever.
Are they the people that run
there's
iLARP?
a family connection there as well. So yeah, they run iLARP.
Because their events look great. All their events look really good. You know?
Yeah. I mean, they're really, really cool. I mean, put my bias to one side. They are really, really cool. The thing with iLARP is they don't have hit points, which freaks me out. So I literally say, okay, I've got 6 hit points. There we go. When I've been hit 6 times, I will fall over.
Oh, right. So you just
otherwise
it's a trust-based system, is it? And you just like, I'm sort of dying. Okay.
It's cool. It's you do it what is narratively appropriate and cool.
Yeah.
But what I do is I spend the entire time thinking, okay, does this look cool? Is this cool? Am I being cool? And do I look like a cheating twat? What's going on here? So if I give myself some hit points and then fall over, I can negate all that and actually role play.
Yeah.
So
there was another one they did as well that I read the description for it. It was like it basically it sounded like a King Kong adventure, but it was like you were a film crew. Right,
yes!
you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, obviously. But
yeah.
And I read it and I was like, we weren't ready to go to anything like that, but I was just like, that sounds cool. You could sign up to be an actor or a camera person or security. And I'm like, that's right up my alley, you know.
Yeah, dinosaurs.
Really?
It looked so cool.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's dinosaurs in that one.
Yeah.
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 It sounds like sorry, I didn't get their names. The people who.
So it's
okay, so are they Empire players as well? Or?
Yeah, so Kitty and Johnny. Johnny started off LARP when he was just a little bit under the age. He should have been at Maelstrom. Don't tell anyone. So he started at Maelstrom, and Kitty and Johnny, I believe, met through LARP. So and they run the iLARP site now.
Because it feels like it's like very complementary to Empire, because Empire is it seems like a long form slow game, and I see a lot of people that friends we've made in Empire go, oh, we're going to this thing, and it seems to be like either like one shots or very short storylines, which seems to like that short, quick, exciting storyline seems to like very much complement what they're doing over at Empire. So I definitely want to have a try of that. I saw they were doing like a King Arthur one as well, and I was like,
so they're doing so they were doing Land Without King, which has just finished up, but they're doing a new one which is like that, but also they're doing this really cool one called Bind Rune. Anyway, that one I'm going to that next weekend. That's my first one of those I'm doing, but it's basically Vikings.
Basically Vikings,
which sounds like
sounds pretty cool. Yeah.
Well, obviously the biggest expense for a lot of people is like kit on top of whatever you got to do. So if it's going to be anything, it's probably something. It's probably going to be fantasy, even though I'm tempted by the Western one. But it's probably going to be fantasy
Western. I mean, we're going to do Western things at some point. I think it'd be worth just getting some Western stuff together, and then. I mean,
I'm an equestrian person. I've pretty much got. I have functional equestrian stuff anyway.
Jacket and a gun on top, sorted.
Yeah.
I mean, and a hat. Everybody needs a hat.
Well, yeah, I've got a hat.
You have a proper Western hat.
I've got a Western hat that's all practical, so I'm almost there.
One of the things I love about a lot of the Eversley ones is that, okay, so if you've got like, I don't know, the King Arthur one or the Vikings one or sort of several others, your basics is your tunics, your leggings, and then, some accessories, and that will work in sort of 3 or 4 different systems. So the idea is that you can have a base kit that works, but it's the accessories that make it.
Yes.
So that's a lot easier to fund and create, I would say.
Yeah.
So-
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's the thing with these specific pieces. At least like you said, if you get your basic. That's usually the biggest expense for us when we were like, right, we're going full ham, but we were like, we need to make sure that we don't go crazy going, oh, we want this specific item piece, especially on our first LARP event. We were like, let's just make sure we've got plenty of trousers, shirts, decent pair of boots, a generic cloak, so it's not like all our budget going onto one like crown or something that we're going to use for one character. Then
at E2 we spent all our money on that.
Yeah, then after we realized that we were like, yeah, this is our life now, so we'll just
I need all this leather and clank.
I mean, basic cloak, and then you add trim for your character. If that character dies, you take the trim off, add your next trim. That's a really kind of that's a really sort of shortcut.
That is a smart idea. Yeah, that's something I should.
Trim to my cloak.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, because
so if you get embroidered stuff, right? So like on an embroidery machine, you get embroidered stuff. You stitch that to your cloak, and then when you die, you take it off, get a new embroidered thing, stitch that to your cloak, and you can look very, very different with accessories. It is. Speaking as someone who occasionally goes through a lot of characters. I've got really bad peripheral vision. Occasionally when people think you're being brave, no, you're just not paying attention.
No, just yeah. It is funny. Like it must be either a way, like just the way people play the game. But there are certain players, even just going to like 4 events and like every single event, they're just like have a new character. So you end up meeting them like 7 different times because their character dies and they come back with generic character the next day, and then the next event they have another character, and then another generic character turns up the day after. Just like... But then other people just like live forever. Yeah.
I like Empire for that, because if you die, you can roll up in the same group and it not be an issue. But if you've done something, if that group is involved in something like really major, and the addition of you again is going to kind of have an over extension effect on whatever it is, then it's kind of polite to go elsewhere. But I personally, and it's really nice to be able to keep playing with your mates. I mean, it's not one I do. I like to jump nations when I move on, just because other than trappings, which are a great way of saying I am not the person I was, I quite like being able to not be mistaken for my last character. No, I totally get that. Fantastic. Well, thank you for joining us, Maz. We'll have to do this again because it was super fun. Like I said, I can't wait to actually have some interactions on the field as well, and maybe see some player events. Make an excuse to come over.
Yeah, too right. Cool. We'll say goodbye to the audience, everyone. See you later.
Bye.
Bye. If you enjoyed this show, make sure that you follow and subscribe so you know when a new episode is posted. You can leave a review, you can share it around, it would really help us out, and we appreciate you doing that. And remember, you can catch us live on twitch.tv/2have_2role. That's the number 2, and roll is into roleplay. Thank you very much for listening.